All right, so we are here with the Executive Director of Medical Education for the Institute for Functional Medicine and recent Educator of the Year Award, Dr. Robert Luby. Doc, first of all, thanks so much for all your great work. You know, the feedback from the practitioner community is just that you go above and beyond to create an exceptional educational experience here at the IFM, and a very worthy winner. You know, last year we had just this amazing timing between so much focus on functional medicine strategies for neurodegeneration and the topic of the annual conference. It seems like this year might even be more so with autoimmune disease.
The timing of autoimmune disease is very important. I'd like to just circle back to this award, James, if I might. Obviously it's a team award, it's not an individual award as I see it for IFM, but I would also like to say that the focus of IFM historically was to train clinicians in the functional medicine model. And what we've got now is a whole ecosystem. And if we maintain our success training clinicians, you're going to have even more categories of awards to give out at future EVO awards. That's my goal now as an educator, to have more categories of awards to give out for the functional medicine ecosystem.
Well, there's a lot to celebrate, isn't there?
There is.
Yeah.
But back to the timing of autoimmunity, yes, the timing is right because the healthcare expense incurred by autoimmunity is just skyrocketing. And autoimmunity, the prevalence is also skyrocketing. So it couldn't be a better time for this topic because functional medicine has the answers for how to treat this in a safe and effective way, and hopefully a cost-effective way as well.
Absolutely. When you started to put together the sort of speaker lineup, who were the people that you were most excited to sort of get on board?
Right. Well, internationally, you have to look at Yehuda Schoenfeld. I mean, he is the internationally recognized luminary in autoimmune disease. And then if you look domestically, we've got Leonard Calabrese at Cleveland Clinic. We've got Ronan Rosenblum from Harvard. We've got Alessio Fasano. I guess he's a little Italian international, but also Mass General. So we've got an incredible domestic lineup. And even within the IFM community, there's Helen Messier, Robert Roundtree, Patrick Hanaway, Terry Walls. We've got recognizable names in the functional medicine community who are also giants in autoimmunity.
When you start to talk to people in sort of conventional autoimmune diseases, are these concepts sort of making their way in to there?
Slowly, not quickly enough. And if you think about the upstream triggers of autoimmunity, they tend to be lifestyle factors, choices, antigens that we get exposed to, the environment, the gut, the microbiome, everything we're talking about. In fact, things that historically IFM accelerated into the mainstream. If you think about the importance of the gut health, the microbiome health, food antigens, things of that nature. So it's all now coming together, those initial things that IFM accelerated, into upstream causes of the current focus of our annual conference this year, autoimmunity.
Absolutely. So when I know you hear from a lot of clinicians that come to these trainings and who are now implementing these ideas in clinical practice, where do you find that clinicians sort of have the most either like stumbling blocks or most success?
I think the most stumbling blocks would be in incorporating systems into their office to make these kinds of changes, to switch away from the model of just a pharmaceutical prescription into programs and a way of really approaching the clinical encounter in a way that gets people motivated to change. You could include the group visit model in this as an innovation that really helps get individuals changing their lifestyle, things that would have an impact on autoimmunity. So it's all those kinds of things, the challenges of the clinical day and the healthcare system challenges of the short visits and the administrative tasks that get in the way of making innovations that would actually allow you to motivate patients and get them to make the changes they need.
And then how do the learnings of, say, this kind of conference end up infiltrating into the the modules? Like, I know there's a whole immune module in IFM, right?
Right, we certainly do. We contribute from the modules to the annual conference, but even more importantly, from the annual conference back to the modules. We count on the annual conference every year to inform new material in all of the advanced practice modules, new material in the certification curriculum. It's one of the accelerators of the emerging concepts, which that's in our strategic plan, but the annual conference is designed to do that, to improve the curriculum.
I know there are people here at this conference this weekend who are coming from major medical institutions, GI doctors, immune doctors coming in and sort of looking at this. It must be quite a responsibility to be able to sort of present this information in a context that is palatable to those people who may not have come across many of these concepts. Is that a key part of your role?
It is. The audience is broad, and as an educator, one of the first principles is who is your audience? And the audience is so broad here, the educational challenge is enormous because we have people from the conventional healthcare setting, and they're familiar with certain ways of doing things, and we have people who are innovators and early adopters in functional medicine who are very comfortable with a different level of comfort. So there's always the issue of the cutting edge and the bleeding edge, and walking that fine line of responsibly presenting the evidence, but also taking on the responsibility too in the ecosystem. We understand we have to be the accelerator of change in the healthcare system. And that means taking these emerging concepts that are scientifically plausible, even at an early stage of evidence, and translating them to the conventional healthcare system in a way that will be palatable. I love that challenge as an educator.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things you mentioned earlier was the Cleveland Clinic and Dr. Calabresi and other things here. I remember last year at the end of, on the last slide, on the last event, they had that sort of interim results of the Cleveland Clinic, and right on the right-hand side was the autoimmune. And it's actually probably the most striking sort of differential for functional medicine versus conventional with cost and outcomes. You know, I think a lot of people feel that the autoimmune disease might be sort of an opportunity for functional medicine to really make it into the mainstream. Is that, do you hold that, do you share that?
I do, and if you think of the audiences there that need to hear this, it's patients will hear about it word of mouth largely. Yeah. They'll hear about it in social media with people blogging about their success with functional medicine and their autoimmune disease, for example. Clinicians need to see the evidence, so we need to generate the evidence in those trials, such as you mentioned the interim results in the Cleveland Clinic study. And then we need to attract the attention of payers, so we need to demonstrate that functional medicine approach to autoimmunity will develop or will result in better health outcomes, but also at a lower cost. And those trials are underway. So I think we have to influence all three of those audiences, and then I think the results will be inevitable. There will be an uptake in scale.
Absolutely. I mean, we're already seeing in terms of just the dietary side of things, you see things like the autoimmune paleo movement as an example where, you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are getting on board with some of the sort of dietary ideas that Dr. Walls and so forth are talking about. You know, it's important to be able to sort of give them a medical home where they feel understood.
Right.
Yeah.
Hope is so important for anybody who's suffering, struggling with a chronic disease, and especially if they've been through some fairly rigorous treatments and not found the success they hoped. And that's what we hope to provide those patients who come to functional medicine practitioners, is not just the outcomes, but the hope that leads to those outcomes. That's part of the key of getting them to those outcomes.
Absolutely. So, you know, all the way through the conference, we've been capturing tips from practitioners who are listening to the content or doing this in clinical practice. I know you're mainly an educator these days, but a physician. If you had to offer tips to our practitioner community about how to replicate some of the great work and the science that's been delivered here, what are some of your tips for the community?
You know, one of the most important things is what we've heard today over and over in this first day is when you're sitting down to eat, sit down to eat and eat for your microbiota. Eat for those bacteria. They want to take care of their home. Our bodies are their home. If you focus on that as a clinician as your first principle, you're going to make some inroads and you'll get some buy-in from your patients, because that change alone will help people start to feel better.
Okay, so we've had, you know, a number of consecutive hits here with the annual conference. Can you give us any tips as to what to expect in 2019?
2019, we are pleased to announce that we have another very timely topic. It's going to be addiction, stress, and pain, and the interplay of those three topics coming together. And we know that's a big problem in America and in the world right now.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for all the great work. It's been an amazing conference to be part of. I know that everyone is equally inspired and empowered by the information, and I see the ripple effects moving through the medical ecosystem.
Thanks, James, and let's keep on this responsibility of stewarding the functional medicine ecosystem.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.